There it is. Good morning, everybody. It's 9 a.m. on a Friday. That means it's time for Bridging Civil Tension with your hosts, Phil Wallace, Kent Jones, and special sit-in guest host, you've got Scott Giles this morning here. Gentlemen, good morning. How are you today?
We are fantastic.
Good morning to you.
Anyway, we're here.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Of course, burning the bridge probably isn't what you want to do.
Probably not.
Right? We want to build bridges. And, of course, Phil Wallace, of course, three-time author. 3 books? How many?
3 books.
3 books, and one's
more that got
bestseller.
Yeah.
Right? Amazon bestseller or author of the year or something. Didn't you get? New author or something?
Editor's Choice, yeah.
Editor's Choice, which was fantastic. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, I don't have any of those accolades. I'm a dad.
4-time father.
That's right. Four-time father.
That's a hell of an accolade.
Yeah, that's why I ain't got no hair. And of course, you entrepreneur, right? Extraordinaire. Reese's Barkery, CBD, your Cannabliss CBD shop, the Fantasy Factory, Community Home Inspections. What am I missing? And the movie theater.
Yeah, go see a movie in McHenry, would you?
It's open.
Hey, we are open.
Just so you are aware, the Downtown Theater, thank you very much to Scott Giles and the other owners, is going to be supporting the very first ever McHenry Fall Film Festival this October, brought to you by the McHenry Area Chamber of Commerce. So we extend you extremely great thanks. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. It's trying to get back to the community and to get everyone involved.
Yeah.
So I'm just happy that we can actually do that for you guys. And,
It's wonderful.
It's been a long time.
It's something that needs to be done. I mean,
it's been a long time.
Our world is made up of different things and cultures and,
So last week we talked about how in the state of Illinois, they passed the bill and I don't know if they passed it, but the bill's going into the House to be voted on to include more computer science for every school and make sure that every student has at least, was it 2 or 4 years of language, foreign language, 2, and then really changing the way that we look at social studies by including and being more open about the truth of history, right? Adding in a lot of Black history, some African studies as well.
I think it was 48 hours later.
Yeah. Yes. So,
I wish the schools would just open their eyes up and really teach what matters. Not that what you're talking about doesn't.
Well, the truth matters.
Well, right, but no. For like me, I think minimally the 2 classes that every kid should have every year is psychology, right? Understanding how our brain works, because how many parents really sit down and talk to their kid and say, "Hey,
not many.
That third, voice in your head that's telling you suck or that you're doing something wrong."
Yep.
Everyone has. It's how you respond to that voice, and kids don't know that.
Right.
So I mean, literally, having a psychology class or something like that, psychology, logic, anything to do with your brain, how your brain functions, and then like health class. They don't really have health class anymore. Explaining the basics of what goes in is what comes out. You eat shitty food, your brain ain't going to work right. Just straight up. You are what you eat.
Yep.
Just the basics. And then finances. I don't necessarily, I want to know about history, right? And it's important to know where we've come from and how we've gotten there. But it's also important to know how to take care of yourself mentally, physically,
financially.
Because if you've got those 3 things next, you're going to be a good, productive person in society. If you don't have that and you don't, where else are you going to go?
Nope,
you're going to rely
true.
on the government to take care of you. And if you can't take care of yourself,
Right, and that's
You're going to have kids, you can't take care of them.
and to go kind of along with that psychology piece is there's a school out in Utah,
Right.
right? You made a post, you shared it,
Right.
shared this. There's a school in Utah whose parents they're going to start teaching Black history during Black History Month, and
Makes sense.
and
You would think.
you would think, and parents started pressuring the staff of that school to where they said, "Well, if you want to opt your child out, you can." I didn't
Why
know.
would they even give them the opportunity?
That's the whole question, right?
There was pressure from numerous parents. The principal wouldn't give an exact number of what that number
Yeah, but
was.
you're entrusting us to teach your children, and this is something that we want to give them the knowledge, and what they do with that knowledge is up to them. But there
Right.
should be, and that's where us as a society sucks, because all of a sudden someone will say, "Throw this in or don't throw that in. We're going to give you the choice to do this or don't do that." Here, we need to just come on to the basics. You need to know how. I mean, really, take care of yourself. We're not teaching kids how to take care of themselves in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Right? So I want you to know about history, Black History Month. I want you to know about Mexican history. I want you to know about white. I want you to know about all these different things. But before that, if you don't know about yourself and how you got to where you're at and how you're going to go someplace, mentally, physically, and emotionally, financially,
Well, a lot of kids. I mean, to that
you're
point,
done.
to that point, my kids have a dad who's going to be 52 here shortly.
You little fart.
Yeah, and
Watch it over there.
yeah, I grew
Watch it.
I grew
I
up.
didn't know he was 52.
I
You
grew.
didn't know he was that.
Give him late 40s.
Hey man, like
Really?
black don't
All right.
crack, bald don't age. That's what.
You know, that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Because I'm older than him.
so the interesting
Still
thing
sexy with me.
is
I know. Thank you.
growing up in Iowa.
I
I
love
grew
you,
up
man.
in a town about the size of Crystal Lake, and it was 50-50. I mean, it was close. I'm going to close to 50-50. 50% of the population was African American, and 50% was white. We had a couple of Filipinos in there, and that was the closest thing to probably Latino that we had back then. So I grew up predominantly in that, and my schooling and everything that I learned and what I teach my kids is what I learned mainly white, and in social studies and histories, it was about the trendsetters who were African American. It was the Rosa Parks, how brave she was that she sat in that front seat.
Right? Wouldn't give up her seat.
But it's just that one day in time that we look at her life and say, oh, they go, well, because they were supposed to sit in back. Who they, right? I mean, we don't talk about the history of how it got to that point or why it got to that point. We just take a look at that one snippet in time, and then we felt good that we introduced Black people into history. So my training then to my kids is kind of that whitewashed piece. Now, my daughter, we've had her on a show here. She's getting her master's in clinical psychology. Has helped me understand my warped sense of history. You start to look at the wider picture rather than, hey, this is what I was taught, right? But at no time would I ever go, oh my gosh, they're going to be talking about Latino history. You're not going to school for the next 3 weeks.
Next 3 weeks. I mean, it's 4 pages, so it's not that bad.
Right? Yeah. Right. Which let me help you with that was a Don Quixote. That was our Latin history. Right?
So my thing with that is
Anne Marie.
what are they trying? What is the benefit that your child is going to receive by learning what Latinos did? Right? I mean, other than just history, right? This is what they did well, right? You're teaching your kids something that's happened, but you're not teaching your kid. I feel that we're not teaching our kids how to deal with what necessarily came out of what the Latinos brought to our world.
Correct.
Let's say, right? I mean,
right. So
you're
here's
not to have an opinion because you're going to get your ass chewed out by some other person, right?
Right. But if to your point, if education is about we want it, you need to know why you're thinking what you're thinking.
Right.
Well, if I don't give you all the truth, then all of a sudden I look at Phil and go, "You're a damn lie."
Yeah.
It is not like that.
If I tell you the truth, but you've never learned the truth,
Correct.
then when I tell you the truth, I'm lying.
Or you don't know how to decipher the truth because there's so many different
Right.
media streams coming at you,
Right.
saying one thing, saying another thing. Now you have to blend it all together and figure it out for yourself.
Sure.
They don't know how to do that because they haven't been taught to be objective and to be open-minded. Kids are closed-minded these days. Black history. We suppressed the blacks for this amount of years, and they're the ones that kind of get screwed, if you will.
They.
Because the kids, right?
Okay.
I mean, so, and I don't. So much gets focused on what has happened, right?
Yes.
Instead of how we can fix it or be
And
better,
move forward.
right?
Right.
Move forward. This happened. This sucked. I can't change it. My great grandfather is the one that was involved in it, but I can't change what he did. But I can change what I'm doing today and going to do tomorrow, and so can you. And this is how we do that. And maybe their mental mindset wasn't right, and that's why that happened.
Right.
You didn't teach them how to deal with their minds.
Right.
So this is how they responded to it.
Yeah.
They had no other way to do it. It's programmed into them.
Right, but at no time should you be able to opt your kid. I don't like I don't like calculus. We're going to opt out of that.
Right. Well, right.
I don't
right.
I don't like spelling.
Right. Well, like for us,
We're gonna opt out of
so
spelling.
like we kind of the same type of thing when they were going to do sex education.
Yeah.
At my son's school, we took him out.
Sure.
And plain and simple, the reason we took him out is because they teach. It was in a religious school. They teach that masturbation is wrong. We're like, fuck that. You know what I mean? That is
Yeah.
so wrong on so many levels, right? Because it's not wrong.
God would not have created soft soap.
Right.
we,
right.
we-
I got
we would
great
look
thoughts.
like we would look like T-Rex dinosaurs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, right.
Sure.
can't reach.
Right. But I mean,
I'm
it's
very
it's
angry.
a natural human
That's it.
function. It's a natural human emotion that happens. You're teaching them it's wrong. So wait
Yeah.
a minute. Why is
Yeah.
it wrong? I'm having these thoughts that are wrong. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, and Melissa, absolutely. You don't hear of any other option to ever opt out of learning something in school. How crazy that this is even allowed. More so, even an option. I didn't want to learn math. I hated math. You still need to learn it. In my opinion, this shouldn't be happening. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's crazy to think now. Now, I want everybody to understand too. Now, here's a little rub to that too, right? Well, there are 3 African American students in this school. I think was it 3
out of 300.
out of 300, and the area that in Utah that we're talking about is 94% Caucasian. Right. So, yeah.
Not a lot of Mormon. Is that what you're saying? Not a lot of African American Mormons.
Right. In this particular town. Yeah.
Right.
You looked fired up over there.
Well, we got snap, crackle, and pop happening here.
Sorry. That was.
Here's the thing: schools in their the perfunctory job of a school is to teach reading, writing, arithmetic. There are 3 basic skills. Anything beyond that is essentially optional. It is essentially additional, provisional. It's something to engage. So we have added history, we've added art, we've added music, we've added all kinds of psychology, we've added all kinds of other areas of education to offer up beyond what schools truly were designed to provide. They were designed to provide people the opportunity to learn to read, the opportunity to learn to write, to communicate,
Yeah,
and the
3 Rs.
opportunity to do math.
Read and write, and arithmetic.
And so
Yeah.
the idea that someone would opt out isn't, I mean, frankly, it's only detrimental to you and your child if you decide to have them opt out of a subject. And that's why we have electives, even starting in younger school
this is
levels.
an elementary
It's
school.
elementary school.
There are no electives
So,
in elementary school.
There should
We
be.
had them.
There should be.
We had
Yeah,
we had
kids
electives.
should be able to
Middle
take something that interests them, so they want to stay involved in the rest of it.
And this is a
all their classes all day long are boring,
and
mundane, and shitty.
it's a Montessori school, so the whole way they teach is that.
So like at Wendell, you had either go to tech, you can do like a home ec, you can do like an art, you can either take French or Spanish. Those were electives, but you're going to take a history class.
Social studies.
You're going to take a social studies class. That's not optional.
Yeah. So
going with what Bree said, she said the longer histories and ethnic for minorities are taught as the other, making it so we have to do in African American schools, the longer ethnic minority groups are we treated as the other. So imagine if we implemented these histories in everyday curriculum, not just Black History Month. So when I moved to Lundall, when I go to Crystal Lake from Florida, I'm taught that I have to learn white history. That's not optional. I can choose between French or Spanish, but I'm going to learn white history. Meanwhile, Kent doesn't have to learn about African American history if he doesn't want to. I don't think that's right.
You're correct. I would agree with that. But I think where we go wrong is we're labeling it Black history. It should just be history.
It should be history.
Right.
And this month it's
should just
African Americans, next chapter Latinos, next chapter.
Right.
And that's the thing, is everything kind of what we were talking about earlier. You're pointing out a specific area or genre to bring attention to that when it doesn't. It's just one area. So right today, this is the attention on this. Tomorrow, the attention is on that. They overemphasize shit that shouldn't even be emphasized at all. It's just life. It's just what it is, right? So why Latino Day? Why Black History Month? Why is it not Black History Year? I mean, you should be learning about where we came from and how we got there and figuring out how we can.
Again, history is history. It's happened to every single person on the planet that has ever lived. It's just what it is.
History has put us to where we're at now.
Why do you think we have to have African American history, though? Because traditionally we're not taught. We've got the Fantastic Five with African American history. You got the 5 people that we talk about every single year on the 4 pages that are in every history book that encompasses Black greatness or Black history. So you have to have African American history because traditionally most schools don't really divide evenly and talk openly with the same type of jurisdiction where, like how you said, we've learned from our mistakes. Okay, well, I'm taught this dude is a criminal because he had a counterfeit $20 bill. That's today. And it's okay for us to shoot him because of a counterfeit $20 bill. Meanwhile, this hero had hundreds of slaves who he raped. These heroes pillaged graves. These heroes murdered hundreds of thousands of people. This guy's an a-hole, and we make statues of them. That's the history that we're taught.
Okay, but let's look at that though. We made statues of them, and now we're tearing them down. Okay, so now if we're going to
why are we tearing them down?
Because
finally people said, hey, listen, this doesn't line up with the same standard that you want me to be okay with. This guy's a bad guy because of what he did. By your standard, so are they. That's why the statues, not just because we're complaining and whining, but because when we hold people up to the same light, if this guy's so terrible, understand what these people did was far worse than this guy that you're pointing the finger.
But aren't we erasing? Shouldn't that statue? It's been there for years, right? Who knows? 100 years? I have no idea. A long time. And but shouldn't we tell the truth about it?
We should, but we don't.
Right.
We say this guy led blank, and we don't talk about what he did during. We will say he led people to victory. We don't say that he treated Black soldiers in the war this way when they went to this town. These are how many people he raped. We don't have the criminal stat sheet. By
tearing that down, don't we lose the opportunity to do that?
Not at all. Because if we shouldn't have it up in the first place, we won't have to tear it down. Because like we talked about in past shows, we wouldn't put a statue up of this guy. If we know the whole truth and the whole story, this statue would have never been created. Now, if we whitewash his history and make him out to be a hero when he's not, then he has a statue. But if it ever came to find out Michael Vick's whole history, I guarantee you that statue of Michael Vick, knowing the whole story, would come down real quick.
Well, and I'm not sure why I would put a statue up of Michael Vick, but I understand what you're saying.
You know, if this town loves football.
Sure.
So we put a football statue up. But if it ever came to find out what he did with those dogs,
Yeah.
people would whine, and then that statue would come down.
Only people who love dogs.
Right.
So only people who love people being treated fairly are whining, and that's why we want the statues down.
So, and there's a great article in the Journal Star, and in there, I don't know if anybody's got got anything out there. Yeah, history is more often than not written by the winners. Exactly,
Well.
that's true. But the bill. Let me do this. Social studies programs in the United States have been criticized for years for putting too much emphasis on the white European origins of the original 13 colonies, the development of predominantly white culture, while paying only scant attention to the history of slavery or the contributions of people from other non-European cultures. Okay. So, and if you take a look at it, you're right. Let's be honest. Christopher Columbus is a Spanish guy. He's not a white guy,
Who discovered
but we portray him as
a white guy.
guy.
Who discovered a country with millions
Where
of
have
people.
you ever seen him portrayed as a white guy?
Oh,
It says he came from Spain.
Pictures and
It's
movies.
written he's a Spaniard, but if you
yeah.
look at the picture, it's blonde blue.
Yeah.
It's not Hector.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
don't know what you've been looking at. I've never seen Christopher. Anyway, but I get the point you're making. But
Yeah,
The fact
I
it's
don't.
Christopher. How many Spanish Christophers do you know?
Hey, Christophe.
I know Christophe. Christopher is extremely white.
That's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty Catholic. I mean, it's-
Well, no shit, Sherlock. He came from Spain, which was a Catholic country.
I don't know. I'm just
I
saying.
mean, that's incredibly dead on. I don't know what you're saying
The
makes
pronoun-
zero
like-
sense at the
The
moment.
Right.
pronouncing
But
of his name,
I get-
the pronouncing
Sure.
of his name as a Spaniard would be different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people don't call me Pedro
Why not?
because my name is Peter, and I was given Peter, but it means
Right.
the same thing. And so, someone else down there may say, "Oh, that's Pedro." You're going to pronounce. You may pronounce it differently. That doesn't. That. I get what you're saying, but the way you're saying it carries no weight for me.
fair
It's a
enough.
different. If it's a
What
different-
about
that's
what
okay.
about the fact that we're taught that he discovered a country?
No,
We don't
he
talk-
bumped into a country. But if we're going to be completely direct about this,
Okay, if we're going to be petty, finish this
going-
rhyme. In 1492, Columbus what? Discovered.
No, he sailed the ocean
Sailed the
blue.
ocean
Right, the ocean blue. Okay, so he discovered a country with millions of people on it. If I discovered your wallet right now, okay, so we get,
I completely.
okay, so we understand.
completely,
You can't
and I'm not.
discover.
No, I am not arguing that he discovered it was here. It existed. He found it. I would go with that. He found it from whence he was coming. But
Sure.
Okay,
Right.
He found it. I don't buy the whole he discovered this stuff. I'm just not buying
But that's
your
how it-
analogy. I'm
that's
not
how it's
buying
taught.
your
But
analogy
it's
that
taught that
he's-
since he came over and then whites then inhabited this new country.
After he came here, what happened?
after he came here, everybody else said, "Oh, hey, new land."
Yep.
And then the people who founded the country we have now have not jack shit to do with Christopher Columbus. We're taught that he discovered its location, but the country
Right.
that we're in right now
So-
was founded by friggin' old white Quaker dudes who came over from the UK because they did not want to be forced
Right.
into the religion that they were forced to do over there. So yeah, we were founded by old white dudes, and that's the honesty of the history of this and everything that went along with that at that point in time. And I don't understand why people
Yeah.
don't know this now. I don't. Maybe because I grew up in an area that actually was part of the Underground Railroad. But
Sure. But here's what happened. Christopher Columbus shows up, and the next thing you know, we're singing Kumbaya and having Thanksgiving with the Indians.
Right.
That's it.
no, that's not how it went.
No, that's the way
That's
it's
what
taught.
it's taught, though.
Who's teaching? That's not how I learned it.
But back in the 60s, things might have been taught a little bit different.
Most schools teach that Then we had a great feast. We came together peacefully. The natives taught whites how to survive, and they had the Thanksgiving. There's nothing about the killing. There's nothing about the
We wiped the natives out like it was a slaughter.
You don't learn that, though. In authenticness, you don't learn that.
By Renaissance artists, and he does look quite Spanish there. Spaniards, they don't look Mexican. So, I mean, I don't know. Spain is a very European Western country. I don't know why this is difficult.
It's not.
That's what it is. It is absolutely is.
It's not
Spain.
difficult.
It's Spain.
It's not difficult. But how many blonde hair Spaniards do you know?
A lot if they diet.
Two.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe two, but
Right. And Jessica Jacobs says that's how it went when I was at school. Right. Blonde, different circumstances at different schools. Actually, Columbus was an Italian, but his journeys were sponsored by the Catholic monarchs of Spain. Thanks, Gary. Listen, and that's how well the history started.
Right.
here we are arguing over this dude being a Spaniard, and he's actually Italian.
He's Italian. He
He's
doesn't
actually-
he looks even less Italian.
He's actually correct because the Italians would not
Right.
send him.
Right.
So he did have to go because he was actually having an affair with the Queen of Spain. That's how he actually wound up getting in.
Here's
That's right.
Here's how social studies is handled right now, and it's to go along with a little bit of what Scott said. The idea is we want people to be proud Americans.
Right.
And so throughout our social studies, we make us look like the victors. We
Right.
make us look like everything is peaches and cream.
The good guys.
We're the good guys. Even when you talk about Pearl Harbor and Hiroshima, you don't walk down the streets of Hiroshima and see the melted people.
Right. What'd you say? The shadows that you can see?
Yeah, I mean
People
there
incinerated on
were
the wall.
shadows on buildings where people stood when this bomb dropped, and we genocide that.
We don't show that.
Right. But we don't. I mean, you got to go to like Time magazine or something like that. You don't get that. It's like, hey, the Japanese came and bombed us, Pearl Harbor, and we dropped an atomic bomb on them, and then the war was over.
See, and Gary was right. He was actually born in the Republic of Genoa.
Yeah,
So
right down the road.
basically, he married a Portuguese lady.
Right. So the other thing that we don't do is when we're talking about the history of slaves is we don't necessarily dig into that. These were doctors,
Right.
These were lawyers that were coming over.
You say that we captured slaves.
These were
I don't
entrepreneurs
think
coming
the
over.
people in Africa were just slaving
They were
in their home country. I think
indigenous
that these
to
were
the jungle.
mothers, fathers, like Kent said, doctors, lawyers, people who are sophisticated in their culture who we kidnapped. and
Thanks,
brought.
Tim, for those pictures too. by
When
the
we
way.
paint our history, like Kent said, we paint it as the heroes, but we will paint what other people in our country did to us, but not what we did. We'll talk about the savage Native Americans. We'll talk about the criminal blacks. We'll talk about the drugs and the Latinos, but we don't talk about the Hiroshimas.
Yeah.
I must have gone to a very one-off school system. I grew up in Independence, Missouri. Independence happened to be part of the Underground Railroad. A house we lived in for quite
Right.
some time
Sure.
was actually part of the Underground Railroad. They were very open about how horrible, and they really, really did focus on the absolute realities. And sometimes as a kid, you're like, holy shit, this is scary, scary crap. I think we even mentioned
Sure.
that or talked about that before. So it just blows my mind
So you had a
that
good-
people don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. You
Most-
had a good teacher.
When we talk
Correct.
about history, most kids didn't know about the Tulsa, Oklahoma. Most people don't know in 1985 our government bombed a city in Philadelphia because they didn't like black excellence. That part's not taught. What they'll talk about is the crime rate's super high for no reason in Philadelphia, but they don't talk about their government bombing a black community of unarmed people because they didn't want to see people
That
get
was
killed.
all over the freaking. Well, I mean, I was alive in '85.
You were
So
alive
they
in
know-
'85. I was born in '86. So what I'm saying is, from people my age and around, we're not taught that. We're just taught that crime is high in that area for no reason, and for no reason at all,
I think I got-
people can't get it together in that demographic.
That made the world
Well,
right.
By the way, dude, Philadelphia was bombed. So, I mean, that was
But-
such a big deal, and it was such a horrific.
Right. But
I mean,
I'm saying taught in schools,
We-
not heard on news. I'm saying taught in schools.
Ashley says, "Hey, as an Italian, we don't
Wow.
claim him either." That's funny. But here's the thing too, though, Pete, that I want you to understand. You're a very learned individual, and you love to you read dictionaries for fun, for Christ's sakes,
true.
right?
What?
Yeah, it's one
Yeah,
of my.
It's one of his
That's
hobbies.
that's been a hobby of mine since I was a kid.
You
That's
read
awesome.
a dictionary for fun.
Yeah.
I love words. I love to know what.
so
they-
you're
Kind of
very
like
very
it's
learned.
expialidocious.
And I can almost bet that a lot of the history that you know is history that you have picked up and learned yourself and dug into because you questioned it, not necessarily what was being or is being taught in the school. Talk to Lex, see how her social studies were. You're right. I mean, we
Yeah,
spent
I guess.
more time in social studies on Laura Ingalls Wilder's travel across America than we did really anything else. Right. I mean, that's just the truth. And I remember, building a little, covered wagon for extra credit, things like that. But I don't remember. I mean, I don't remember the gruesomeness of what made America America.
Did they-
Oh my God,
did
it's
they talk
absolutely
about that?
fascinating. This country is not built on milk and sugar and honey.
No, right.
This country is
War and
built.
carnage.
Yes, absolute horrible gore, carnage, blood, sacrifice, pain.
So-
Thanks, Kate.
It's built on everything from
Yeah.
the suffering of blacks to the Chinese to the Irish to
Right.
people who were so poor that whether they were white or any
So-
color, they
So
came in
here's
as
the
an
thing that
indentured
really
servant.
throws up to
It's
me.
amazing
Right.
what got this country together.
Right.
The amount of
Yeah,
absolute
you're right.
horror and gore that founded what we have today is absolutely stunning. You should know. Hell's Kitchen is called Hell's Kitchen for a reason. It was one of the bloodiest, goriest, most horrible places that existed at the time in our country.
And
So
by
let
the
me
way,
go back to where I was getting with
Yeah.
the mental and
Yep.
the emotional and the psychology, right? So you're teaching social studies of what happened back then, right? They just say what happened and who it affected. They didn't necessarily dive into the fact that, the people that did that, here's their mental status.
correct.
Here's what they were taught, so they don't know any better. So this is why they chose this idiotic.
I mean, the only person really is that happens that people still fall back on is Hitler. They kind of well, he was kind of this way, and that's why he did what he did.
But back then,
Right.
But back then they thought that was
Right.
because they didn't know any different. They didn't teach people to question
Yeah.
somebody that's saying to do something that just doesn't seem right to you, but you
Right.
followed
Right.
because that's what they did. They didn't give them their own independent brain or
Yeah.
teach them how to use their independent brain,
And
Right.
right,
knowing
and
where they
I
come from and how they deal with it.
and I think Tim is right out there. Teachers are tied to a pre-approved curriculum, right? And that's what this new law is doing.
Pre-approved.
Pre-approved, is that what it says?
Approved.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit.
Right. So that's what this new law is doing, is saying, listen, there has to be some differences here. So what the bill calls on every elementary and high school to develop a curriculum that includes one unit of studying pre-enslavement Black history. That unit will cover the period from 3000 BCE to 1619. When the first enslaved Africans were brought to America. Now, Black history units will also have to include the study of the reasons why Black people came to be enslaved and the study of the American Civil Rights Movement. Right. So we're trying now that we're understanding that we've got to be able to get in there to help our kids understand why.
Right? They don't understand
Right.
why. They're just told what happened. It don't mean shit.
Right.
If you tell me this happened, whatever.
Yeah, it's a Disney
anything
movie.
In general,
Right,
this
whatever.
happened. Okay, great, that happened. My question, and one of the things I tell my kids nonstop, drives them nuts, is question everything.
Always.
Why did that happen?
Yep.
What was the mental? What was the mental? What are you thinking? Was their mental status at the time? Why would something like that happen? What were they taught? Why did where did that come from? Why is their train of thought this way? Why did they not
Right.
do it this way? Well, it's because they weren't taught
Sure.
taught any different, right?
Sure.
And because you're pre-approved, right? Things in school is bullshit. My kids, when they went to school, or any kids, I want them to think outside the box. I want them, for lack of a better term, to get in trouble for questioning why they did that. Well, wait a minute. Why did Columbus, for a nice way, why did Columbus leave where he was at and sailed to find a new world, even though he wasn't looking for a new world?
Right.
He found it. But why? What was behind it? Injustice. Didn't like where he was at,
Yep.
right? So he took it upon himself to change his circumstances. We're not teaching that these days. We're teaching you, well, here this is how you have to learn to take a test
Sure.
so you can pass, so the government gives us our funding.
That's
Not,
correct.
I want you to be an independent person so you can think
Yep.
and do your own thing, and make us a better world. No, we want you just to think this because this is what happened.
Yep.
Not don't question why it happened. This is what happened. You can't change it. Well, I can't.
But you also have to answer, this is what happened, even if the facts don't align with it.
Right.
That's the part that's frustrating.
That's the question.
I have to say, this guy's a hero. We talked about this last week. This is the president who never told a lie. Even though I
That
can
you
read any.
know of.
Well, that's what they took. George
Right.
Washington never
Right.
told a lie. Even though the history books will tell terrible things about this individual, I have to praise this dude and then hear about how.
You don't have to.
Yes, you do.
No, you don't have to. They're saying you should, and this is the reason why.
If I'm,
And if you're what's the word I want to say? I'm really bad with words, so I apologize, people. But you're programmed. This is what they say.
Yeah.
This is what you believe, and you have to. You can't. You shouldn't. Today we are almost punished for having outside the box thoughts, and it's not even really outside the box. It's just your own independent thinking and questioning as to why. He did it. Okay, great, he did it, but why did he do it, and why does that affect me, and why should I have to believe it
Right.
or even accept it? I don't,
why do I have to tell this fairy tale story that he never told a lie, though? Why does that have to be the answer?
because they're trying. In my mind, they're trying to make
But
the person
the
seem better.
quote was
than they are.
actually here's I think
It's
what
political
I don't know
correctness.
how this got misconstrued and drawn into George Washington never told a lie. There was a parable of when he was a young boy and he chopped down a cherry tree, and his father asked who chopped down the cherry tree, and he said, I cannot tell a lie, it was I who chopped down the cherry tree. It was one instance where he was using a parable, and he did that in a campaign speech in talking to people, and he didn't even want to be the president. He wanted him to be king. He's like, no, I'm not being a king, whatever. But he did that in a campaign speech to encourage people to be honest within government. It was a parable story. I don't know how that became this guy never told a lie. He used that simple quote as a parable for being honest within government and governmental communication in a speech that he was delivering before a brand new government. So how that became he never
speech
told a
that was
lie is
prepared.
beyond.
Sure, but that's that's the way
Speech
it's
that was
been.
prepared for him so he could appeal to the masses.
Now the nice thing is,
Yeah.
Is that really him? I mean, really? I mean, that's my question. Is that really him? Or
I
was
don't
that
know that
Right.
he actually
Right.
wrote it or if it was written for him. I know that it was
as a president, I'm sure it
that's
was
the
most
purpose
likely
of its
written for him,
delivery
or at least
and
Right.
use.
modified
Yeah.
to be
But-
correct.
I can feel and hear your passion, right? That you're upset, like, wait, right? Because that's who you are, and that you are, like I said, you're very, very learned. Right? So that may be something that a lot of our listeners didn't know, right? So, and you're like, ugh, and I know that,
But why?
I know that you strive for and press on the truth, no matter what situation you're in. I mean, if the truth is going to put you in jail, Pete, I know you, and you're going to stick to the truth.
Is it too early?
That's who you are, right? Right out there. But that's where I mean, take a look at what Miss Collier says right now. My son specifically asked his teacher, since we have been learning the same thing all year, can we learn about Black history? Gave her ideas such as the history of Black people, the things they went through and where we are now. He wanted explanations on things. All he was given was a link to do research on, nothing else about it. He doesn't understand why nobody wants to discuss his culture or things that his culture went through. It's sad as a parent to know he feels like he doesn't matter much. Right?
That sucks. That's
not paying
BS.
attention that.
Right. Now, here's the deal. Now, this is what I said about the situation out in Utah. It's 94% Caucasian. Only 3 people out of 300 students are African American. How true and what type of curriculum is it? You know what I'm saying?
No,
sounds like home.
What type of curriculum?
Sounds like home.
Right. I mean, just like this, I'm going to guess that her son's teacher is Caucasian.
Wando.
Well, that's a
Okay.
assumption and a half.
Well, it is, but
Why do you say, I'm
because-
gonna question that. So why
Yep.
do you say that? Because if she was Black, she would have made sure it was that she taught it to him.
probably would have had a better,
Would have had a different answer.
maybe a different answer.
Probably
Maybe
so.
Why do you say that though?
because we as people, our psychological buildup, we don't want to go someplace that's going to make us uncomfortable. And as a teacher specifically, I don't want to go someplace that I don't have the answer.
And his parents just said so.
Right. So,
Wait, what?
Yes, they are. That's his dad.
yeah,
Wait,
So-
yes, they all as far as
Yeah,
being
the teacher.
white.
go
Yeah.
Caucasian.
No, I
Right.
understand that, but the fact that you question that, for mine, it shouldn't matter if they're white, Caucasian,
You're right.
Latino, right? It should be addressed in the same respective manner. Look, this is not what's in our curriculum because of how the government sets our standards.
Yep.
But I would love to talk. The right way, I think, is I would love to talk to you after class about that, and we will research it maybe together, and maybe you can do a paper on it. But instead,
That would be beautiful.
here, research
Beautiful.
this and shut your mouth.
Right. That's why I
Shut your
say,
mouth, because I've got to tend to all these other kids that are brainwashed
Right.
and aren't going to think for themselves. You're thinking for yourself. That kid should be praised.
that's right.
That kid should be praised. Instead, he's being. And this
I
is
agree.
the kid that I was in school. I got in trouble all the time because I questioned
Right.
everything, and I got in trouble.
So let me help you with my sixth grade. I'd be interested to see what grade he's in. My 6th grade daughter.
8th.
I asked yesterday. Now,
Say that?
No, I know the kid.
Oh, okay.
my 6th grade daughter, I asked her yesterday. I said, "Hey, you know what? It's Black History Month. What have you learned about African Americans?" She goes, "Dad, I don't have social studies."
Wait, what?
That's what I said, Pete. I go, "You don't have what?" She goes, "Dad, she's not the world's best reader, right? So she has some trouble. So she's in a reading class instead of social studies." Well, I said, "That's okay. Shouldn't you be reading about
Social studies.
Black history?"
Right.
Well, Dad, I don't know. Huh. Well, okay. So there are school districts out there where the curriculum, some kids aren't even getting social studies, and the teachers don't know how to think for themselves anymore because they
Here's
just
for
want to,
social studies.
right? Because they
Put it
just,
up on your stupid
the
phone.
teachers have to
Excuse
give
me.
you this curriculum so that they pass a test or get a high enough score on a test that the school
So the
gets
government-
money,
Well, the government pays them, right? And that's
right?
that's where our system has completely failed.
Yeah.
And we know it. That's the sad. I'm going to swear. That's the sad fucking part about it. They know it, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey, if
the important issues that we need to address, everyone sweeps underneath the table and pushes it onto somebody else, just like our politicians. I
Correct.
don't want to get into politics,
Correct.
but
And
it's all swept underneath the covers or underneath the carpet. And they just say,
Yep.
that's just the way it was, or that's what we have to do. And that kid's discounted. That kid, hopefully,
Yeah.
because I see mom and dad are teaching them, thank you so very much because you're a good, concerned parent.
Right, but how many parents are going to ask their kids, what do you learn in Black history? What do they
If
talk
they
about
don't have Black parents.
if they don't have Black parents?
That's a great question. And they should, but most parents don't even get involved
Right.
in their kids' education anymore. Right? They don't pay attention
Correct,
to it.
and we talked a little bit about that
And
off
I'm guilty
camera.
of it somewhat because my son gets frustrated when I ask him about it, what's going on.
Sure.
Because he feels that the quality
And-
is not there.
And Facebook, I hate. Oh my gosh, how do you know that teacher was just trying to keep it? You know
They
what?
were.
listen, I've dealt with, I've got 4 kids. I've got kids who are adults. I've been through this ringer a couple times, and I first of all respect teachers because they're the ones
most underpaid, undervalued
Yeah,
people. In
absolutely, without a doubt, and women are even less. And
oh man, are you opening up that
Yeah.
package? What the hell is wrong? I'm leaving now, gentlemen. Thank you. Have a great day.
so
Peace out.
so what I'm saying is I know how they respond now. Facebook user, I'm not catching your name, but if you are a teacher and you were a teacher, there are you have to toe the line and answer certain ways, otherwise
You lose your job.
yeah
You lose all credibility, and that's what's once again horrible.
it is.
Because what's being taught or what you can say and not say is because it's politically correct. Why don't we just come down to reality now? Politically, who cares? I don't want to say who cares about politically correct, but reality. What do you want your kids to understand? What do you want your kids to know? What do you want your kids to teach their kids to stop this cycle? Right? I mean, kids only absorb what you allow them to. Well, I guess.
Well, and if you're the parent and you're opting your kid out of something that makes you uncomfortable,
you're a moron.
You're an idiot.
Because now
you're an idiot.
You're avoiding the issue. You're not letting your kid make their own educated decision. Because you have a problem. Maybe you have a problem with it, right? And you don't want your kid to learn, or to have the facts. I want my kids to learn and to have the facts and to dispute with me, and say, "Hey, well, this is the way I was brought up, and this is why I think this way." Yeah. Today, these kids, the teachers aren't. I feel teachers aren't even teaching them anymore because they're going, "Well, just go here."
But that's what this one did.
This is how my son learns, and it's not a bad thing.
It'd be interesting to see. Where was the link to?
Right.
Ashley, do you have the link that he was sent? Can you post that for us, please?
So, and Stephen, how are you, brother? How's Black?
What's Black history?
What's Black history? It'd be good if I could read. Maybe my education wasn't the best.
Well, maybe some glasses you got on.
Could
Those
be.
are Funkalicious.
What's Black history in areas where Black people are more a token community than seen as foundational?
What?
So what he's saying is and that's why I said I posted that on the. That was my comment on your post was I'd really want to see the curriculum because I may have to pull my kid out of there too if it's going to be whitewashed and garbage. Right. So I can't without seeing the curriculum, what is actually happening. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I have to question that as
we did. And that's why I sent all my kids. My kids went to private school because I had a choice as to what to teach them, except the only problem that we had, like I said, was when it came to health class.
Yeah.
You need to choose and let the kid, that's what's great about the Montessori's.
Yeah.
Here, find you, do you. Here's the basics.
Yeah.
But, branch off into do you. Right?
Yep.
I would say the one thing about the political correctness, though, it's frustrating when we find time to where we don't want to say things because of political correctness, because I can be taught I'm a thug. I can be taught Indians are savages. We could be taught Mexicans are blank, but we don't want to be drug dealers, but we don't want to be politically correct when we talk about Black scientists or Black doctors or Black inventors. And we could talk about that all day long, but we don't want to get into it because it's not part of our curriculum. There's still opportunity to talk about how they were doing great things and created great things in society, but we don't want to talk about that stuff because it's not of our curriculum. Or then we're going to hide over a politically correct list at that point, but we don't want to talk about it when it's degrading our fellow Americans. I don't understand that.
And that's exactly. And so you don't understand it. Do you question it?
All the time. That's why we have a show.
Right. Yeah. Right. And you question it. But do you have kids? No?
I do. I have a 6-year-old. Well, it'll be 6 in 2 weeks.
Probably a little too young to really.
6? Dude, he's like this big.
So at 6, you should already be talking to that kid.
We do.
Right. So, but my thing is like kids at, 6 years old is,
it's first grade.
First grade?
They kindergarten,
right first grade.
Okay. So I think first grade that, kids should already be starting to be taught psychology. They should be start talking about health, right? And ethics, right? And they kind of fall into those categories. Why you're thinking, what you're thinking, and why, you know,
Yeah.
and how do you come
Yeah.
to that point?
Right.
If you're a good enough parent that you're teaching them and, you know, telling them how you feel, what you feel, and letting them know that what they think is fine,
Right.
Yeah.
because that's them and they perceive things differently.
Which
Parents
I
don't
am.
do that anymore. They're
Which I
just,
do.
the school said it, I'm not going to question it. Fuck that.
Right.
Right? I mean, I couldn't tell you if we actually went back to the teachers and what they think of me and the things
sure.
that I did, I'm sure they think I'm absolutely crazy.
Well, and my kids,
Because I didn't just accept something because they said this is what happens.
when my kids come home and they complain about a teacher or something like that, and the teacher kind of brushes them off like that teacher did, I go, "Do you want me to go talk to them?"
Yeah, my kids.
And my kids are like, "No, Dad, I got this."
Yeah, I'm good.
I go,
So
"Okay,
I
well,
said,
what are you
yeah.
going to say?"
You go right. Then if you don't want me to talk to them, you go say
That's
something
right.
to them and why it bothers you.
That's right.
Because if
Right.
you don't address it, it's just going to get swept underneath the carpet,
That's it.
and it never gets addressed.
And that's, I mean, now the good news is that school in Utah reversed and said, no, you can't,
Right.
you can't opt out. But look what it did for them. I mean, you just and listen, you're an idiot. You're just you're not a good person. If you, I think if you try to shelter or say, hey, you know what, I disagree with that.
Right.
You're a good parent if you say, you know what, why don't you go through there? And if you have questions, let's talk and I can tell you why I disagree with that. Right?
Right.
Or agree with that or whatever.
Right.
And it's that you have to be that open. You can't pick and choose. You shouldn't be able to pick and choose in elementary what your kid
That's what Maria's saying.
learns.
Right towards the top. It says it's great that everyone is teaching at home. But representation matters, and to opt out is peak white fragility and reeks of privilege. Hold on, you scroll down.
Yeah,
There we go.
Yeah.
Black kids don't get the choice to opt out of the history. The rest of us white folks, and the fact that history is so whitewashed. True.
Yep. And it has been
For a long time. That's what my mom was saying.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
backstory for what my mom was saying is that my grandfather was a history teacher, but he would keep it honest with history. Scroll up some, yeah. And so
Yeah,
we're black,
Marie,
yeah.
yeah.
And so in our school system in Georgia, so after a couple of years, he was told he could no longer teach history, so he had to retire early because in Georgia they don't want him telling authentic history and real history. So they told him he could no longer teach African American history in the school system.
I think I know why we got to learn a lot of the things we learned very early, first, second, third grade, and then on up. In the school that I went to, and again, a long time ago, and I know you've already said I'm very learned, we actually had a black lady who was the principal. I had kind of
good for
forgotten
her.
that.
There you go.
I
see?
had forgotten that. She was actually one of the coolest freaking people. She was so nice. I actually got sent to the office one time because I cracked my head on the I was running under a sign. I got my head stuck on a sign, and there's actually still a scar up here. It said, "Do not leave the playground."
Right.
And I was leaving the playground, ducking under the sign to do so, and I stood up, thought I was under it, and it just
That's
went,
called karma.
Right.
and I got sent to the office, and she thought and I remember her, she said, "Did you get in?" Because there was a little blood. She said, "Did you just get sent in here for fighting and roughhousing?" And I said, "No, I tried to leave the playground." And she says, "Oh, I remember her. Oh my God, you poor kid." And I'm like, "Well, I was trying to leave the playground,
Right.
but she was as sweet as she could
Yeah.
be, and but she was like that with all the kids. But maybe that's why we got to learn what we got to learn. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
And that probably is. You had a great leader. I mean, your grandpa, right? Her dad. That's not 1980. I mean, that was back in the day.
Right.
That was in a rough time
Mhm.
to stand up and want to do that. So, yeah.
But going a bit with what you're saying though, with the teacher, I think he understood though is with some of the stuff that people are posting right now about how they feel about different races, are they really going to go to bat to give me the best education,
Right.
authentic education, to show a representation of black people? If their Facebook post currently shows they don't even like black people.
Well, and that's why I say it's great to have that curriculum, but as long as 93% of
Teachers.
the teachers in a school district are white, especially if that curriculum's coming into social studies, if 85 to 95% of social study teachers are Caucasian, then how deep can I go?
Right.
How deep can I go? Right? Because it may make me uncomfortable learning that truth.
And then I have to apologize for some of the things that I.
Yeah. Hey, this. Oh boy. And is it going to be like sex education where it's, hey, can you sign this because we're going to be talking about?
I mean, right? Maria just said if people are old enough to have guns shoved in their face, why aren't other kids old enough to learn about history?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
It's not sheltering.
I don't know that there's an age limit on having a gun put in your face, but
that's a bit of an extrapolation. I kind of get where she's going with that, but
1974. Wow. Thanks.
Right. But yeah,
right.
That's,
so
I just think that we are so afraid of telling the truth about what our history as a nation is.
But why though?
I don't get why we're afraid of that, and that's my own. I guess that's my own mental issue to deal with, because I have no, I have no problem.
Like for instance,
I don't understand it.
If we went into truthfully how drugs and guns got into certain neighborhoods,
FBI,
then we can't just villainize the people who have guns and drugs in those neighborhoods. We have to say that we're the one who put them in those neighborhoods. We're the one who kept them from getting fair housing acts in certain good neighborhoods. We're the one who kept the education poor in those neighborhoods. We can't just write them off as dumb niggas no more. We have to take responsibility for what we did at that point, and we can't just keep downplaying them and calling them animals and savages.
But how do people not know that?
Because people don't research. People go off of what the curriculum tells them. What the curriculum tells them is that we live in the greatest nation in the world, and we've never done anything bad to nobody.
My job,
so if that's what we're taught, if that's what we're taught, then finding out the truth lets me know that Santa Claus is no longer real for America. And that's where they're afraid to rip the Band-Aid off of.
But there's
I don't Jesus.
How
they're not ready for that
one. Next week,
man. Christians, tune in. Here we go.
This bronze is milky white all of a sudden.
But so people are not aware that there really is no. I mean, there's no Band-Aid. People keep trying to pretend there's a Band-Aid. Right. There is no Band-Aid. It's all right there for you. People are afraid, I guess, to look at it because wounds are ugly and wounds, they leave a scar. But we need to understand why that scar is there. And we need to, so that we don't make another wound. We don't make another hole. So it floors me. And again, Kent, maybe because to your point earlier, I dig.
Right.
And thank you, man.
All right, brother. Thanks.
There is nothing more valuable to me than the truth of any situation. And it's always there. It may be under a rock you haven't lifted up yet, but it's always there. And how people don't know this and how people, it confounds me. How do we allow this education process that you're describing to me to occur?
But like he said that we have to decipher where to get the truth from. Where are we taught that you can find truth? In schools, in the school books. Yeah. But we don't talk about openly that the school books is whitewashed. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
That you're going to find the stuff that makes heroes out of white criminals and villains over black heroes. That's what it's going to find in the history books. We don't say that openly.
Right.
Go ahead.
Now, in Maria, absolutely. Then they have they either need to resign as a teacher or get put through some anti-racism courses. The teacher isn't there for themselves; they're there for the kids in the classroom. They shouldn't be teaching if they can't equally care about their black kids in the class and their culture, heritage, history.
True, Maria, but how many teachers are going to identify, and I'm rocking with you, but how many teachers are going to identify themselves that, hey, listen, I personally have a problem with black people in BLM, so I don't think I'm comfortable teaching their course. They're not going to identify themselves like that.
First of all, I will say this. There are in today's school systems an overwhelming amount of teachers who only teach because I got 3 months off.
Exactly.
And you can challenge me on this, and I can tell you that's it. Now, there are some great teachers out there who care. And you can tell because they put in the time, the effort, the skill, and those are the teachers that the kids love. Those are their favorite teachers.
Right.
But there are an overwhelming amount of teachers who are in it because, hey, we get 3 months off. Now, you go to a year-round calendar for education, and then you'll see a little
goes up a notch,
right? So I know we got to wrap this up. Yeah, they are. And so these schools around here are predominantly white. Absolutely.
Agree what she says after that.
He dropped it off. If there were more black or mixed kids, would they make it? They may, and
if they stayed,
right. So yeah, I mean, it's hopefully that changes, but it shouldn't matter, right? So, yeah, I agree. Be a review boards and schools, with BIPOC on the panel, address these issues with each school. Absolutely.
Right.
I think so. Thanks everybody for chiming in.
We appreciate you guys so much.
And we're going to keep pushing a little bit on education probably next week too. With Black History Month, we don't want to go away from that. There's so much there that we still just haven't uncovered.
Right.
And come back, join us every Friday morning. We really appreciate it.
Love you guys.
All right.